Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Gangster Squad. Now, I was really looking forward to this one. Everything about it suggested that I would be watching a great movie. But then the reviews started coming in, and for the most part, the critics were unimpressed. This concerned me because this would be the type of movie that I would have expected the critics to embrace. So I started looking at the general audience's opinions, and it seemed like they were much more generous. So I did what I rarely do, in that I started reading reviews of Gangster Squad before seeing the movie itself. Usually I try to wait to read other people's opinions before making my own, which is of course after I've seen the movie. But in this case, I wanted to understand why there was such a difference. What kind of movie should I expect? And this turned out to be smart because I think enjoying Gangster Squad really comes down to what you expect out of it. Don't expect a great movie. Expect an entertaining one at best. The critics obviously wanted a dramatic period piece that was more akin to a character understudy than instead what they got was a very violent, dumbed-down actioner. Now, general audiences tend to be more sympathetic to those kinds of movies, so that would explain the differing opinions. And once I realized this, I did find myself enjoying it. It's not great, as I've said. I don't even want to call it good, but I don't want to say it's mediocre either, even though I guess it is closer to mediocre. I'd say it's an average movie that is above average just because the cast involved. But with that said, it should have been better considering the cast involved. So where should I begin? Because this is one of those movies where I could either say too little or too much, so I'm trying to balance it and decide what I should include for this video. The story is pretty much The Untouchables, but it's a retooled version. They replaced the villain, and that's pretty much it. And the main problem I think that plagues Gangster Squad is that it is very familiar. You feel like you've seen all of these characters, subplots, cliches, conventions, and so many other gangster movies, and really, Gangster Squad offers nothing new. But I could overlook this if the execution is good enough. And I thought the execution, while relatively uninspired, was still competent enough for me to enjoy. I really do suspect that there was once a great movie here. There's definitely a feeling that a lot of this film was left on the editing room floor in terms of the characterizations and story. This is all a guess. I don't know. I don't really know what went on behind the scenes. Obviously, there was that notorious incident where there was a shooting in The Dark Knight Rises showing, and so the producers of Gangster Squad removed a theater shootout that would take place in that movie and replaced it with something else. But beyond that, I know nothing else. But there are a lot of loose ends that are really distracting, and I actually wrote a list I'm going to read off of right now just so I don't get too sidetracked. For example, the wife is pregnant, which is a cliche, and she doesn't want Josh Brolin's character to do all this dangerous stuff. She wants him to be her husband. That's typical, but there's this weird scene early on where he asks her for help, and I'm like, okay, I'm just figuring it's emotional help or whatever, or emotional support. Instead, she actually chooses who he needs to put on his Gangster Squad. And I kept thinking, why? What makes her qualified to do this? Did I miss something here? And she ends up making some really good choices, but I wasn't sure where she would have the experience to do all that. I could have missed something, I don't know, but I felt like I needed to point that out. Another one. There's a subplot involving Ryan Gosling's character. He's having an affair with Emma Stone's character, even though she's with Sean Penn's character. And she doesn't know that he's a cop. So Josh Brolin he needs information, so he's trying to get Ryan Gosling to talk to her, which of course would mean he'd have to confess that he is a policeman to her. But then that interaction takes place off screen. Instead, what we get is the after sequence with that. And that was just really distracting. That really feels like they deleted that at some point. And then what information Josh Brolin wanted, that's never brought up again, as far as I know. It's just sort of left hanging. So that whole subplot could have been trimmed down so much. Let's see. There's this, I could forgive this one. Josh Brolin's wife asks Ryan Gosling to keep an eye out on her husband and stuff like that, but that seems kind of like a pointless addition. I was expecting the movie to go a certain way there, but it never did, so I guess that that's an acceptable sequence, but it was also maybe one that they did not need. Ryan Gosling's character in general makes no sense. He's one of those guys who he's not very good at his job. Well, he is good, but he chooses not to be. He doesn't want to put himself in danger, yet he's having an affair with this girl who's technically dating one of the most notorious gangsters. And this is before Ryan Gosling becomes motivated to actually do something. So I didn't really feel they fleshed him out enough to where he started making sense. Now, it's possible that all of these subplots or character traits, they all were fleshed out at some point, but were trimmed down or removed entirely. Well, not removed entirely, but they should have either retained those subplots or removed all hints of them, because what we got just really makes Gangster Squad seem unfocused. Either be a great gangster epic or just be a real slim, lean, mean action movie. Choose one or the other, don't try to be both. And that's what I really felt Gangster Squad was sort of doing, and that's what made it seem so messy in retrospect. The characters in general are just archetypes. All the actors do good in their performances, but none of them really stand out, with the exception of Sean Penn. Now, Sean Penn as Mickey Cohen, he has the most to do. Mickey Cohen is portrayed as a total psychopath, a complete exaggeration of the real guy from what I hear. But Sean Penn is having so much fun, and he's so hammy and over the top that you just love his performance, even though he's also kind of terrifying. So Sean Penn is definitely the biggest reason you should watch this movie. Everybody else, though, does fine. I was expecting Ryan Gosling to be the main character based on the trailers, and him to just sort of rehash his performance from Drive. That wasn't true. Josh Brolin is the real main character. Ryan Gosling is playing a more upbeat version compared to his performance in Drive. This isn't too difficult of a role for him, but he was pretty entertaining. And Josh Brolin's always a lot of fun, but he is, for the most part, playing a very standard character. It seems like lately Josh Brolin's been playing great. Josh Brolin's usually the standout performance in these subpar movies like Jonah Hex or what was the one he did? Men in Black 3. But in this one, he's just part of the mediocrity. He's not bad, but he's just, I don't know, it's an easy role for him to play, and he's acceptable. Everybody else is reasonably entertaining. I liked Robert Patrick as the gunslinger, Giovanni Ribisi as the tech expert. You'll recognize everybody, and everybody does deliver a competent performance, and there's enough interactions between the characters to where I enjoyed watching them. I did not want to see them all die, even if I wasn't really emotionally invested into the movie. But the cast, as I said, they definitely elevate this movie from average to above average. The reason why I don't believe that Gangster Squad was always such a by-the-numbers gangster film is the dialogue I thought was really good. It was very classy and stylish. Definitely maybe a bit too overly written, especially when it came to Sean Penn's character, but it works just because it fits the over-the-top persona of Mickey Cohen in this movie. The rest of it, though, there's a lot of quotable lines. Like, I liked Nick Nolte's it's not a crime wave, it's enemy occupation. That was really cool, and there's a lot of funny and slick one-liners that I really enjoyed. Then there's some cliched ones that you've seen in other movies, like when the guy says, "You can't shoot me, you're not a cop," and he says, "Not anymore," and takes him out. That kind of stuff I've seen many times before, but for the most part, I was impressed with what came out of everybody's mouths. Now, usually in these really conventional action or conventional anything, the dialogue is the first major indication of what you're going to be watching, because if the writer was uninspired when it came to the story and stuff like that, then they're not going to give a shit about the dialogue. But in this case, it did seem like the writer really put a lot of thought into the dialogue, into the lines. So that's part of the reason why I believe there was once a much greater movie here, but unfortunately it was likely left on the editing room floor. When it comes to the action, you get a lot of gun shootouts, a lot of some car chases, and they're all really good. I had no complaints there. The direction was kind of a surprise because I was expecting a much flashier movie. Based on the trailers, it seemed like it was going to be more stylish and an exaggerated form of reality. And the actual film, though, it is much more grounded and relatively low key. The more stylish parts actually are a bit distracting. Like at the very end, there's a slow motion shootout that you see a little bit of in the trailer. It was still a cool scene. It just didn't really feel like it belonged in this kind of movie. It is incredibly violent. Within the first 10 minutes, you see people getting their hands cut off, ripped in half, burned to death, all sorts of crazy death sequence, and it never really lets up on them either. So if you want your violence, you definitely got your violence. Is there anything else I could say? Looking at my notes, I don't think so. It is well paced. I mean, I was never bored. I was never impatient with it. I was always enjoying myself as I was watching it. But that's really all Gangster Squad is. It's a great time killer, nothing more, and it should have been bettered considering the talent involved, not just in front of the screen. The guy who did this, he also did Zombieland, which I loved, and 30 Minutes or Less, which was all right. I thought it was pretty funny. But that may be part of the problem because he was definitely out of his element. Those were comedies. This is a much more serious movie, although the funny parts are certainly pretty funny. But I don't know. I'm not really sure who to blame. It could have been just the editing. It could have been the director. It could have been the writer. I could be totally wrong as to my theories as to why Gangster Squad was such a disappointment. But the end result is that I had some fun, but it should have been better. So would I recommend it? Yes. I'd say it's a strong rental, but I don't know if I'd say you should go to the theaters to watch it. There are so many other movies, well, not so many, but there are other movies out there that I think are more impressive for what they are, such as Django Unchained, The Hobbit, Jack Reacher. They satisfy more for their respective audiences than Gangster Squad does. So if you're like me and you feel like you have to see everything, Gangster Squad's not bad enough to totally avoid, but for the most part I'd say that it would make a much better rental. So that is my review. I hope you enjoyed it. I did a written review on The Big Boss lately, but I did not do one for Gangster Squad. Just didn't have enough to say, I felt. Plus it's not the kind of movie I usually review. But follow me on Twitter. Definitely check out my website. Hopefully Critiquing the Critics will be returning soon. I'm working on it as fast as I can. And that is all. I see you guys later. Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Gangster Squad. Now I want to get this part out of the way. I thought the movie looked great from the beginning. Everything about it suggested that it would be a spectacular film, but it was being released in January, and January is kind of the wild card of release month. Cat, you just screwed up my shot.